This is gonna be a hard one. Hello, my brothers and sisters. My name is Daidarius, and welcome to the review of The Defenders. So, The Defenders is the culmination of Netflix Marvel superhero series. They have 4: Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones, and they have each had their own series to introduce us to them. And this is now culminating in this big event called The Defenders. And how is it? Well, see, the thing is, I'm gonna get just briefly through the story, and then we're gonna take what works and what doesn't. So let's jump into it. So first we see Danny Rand fighting some unknown threats over in Asia, and we have a suspicion as audience, but we don't get this confirmed until later on. But they find this person who is connected to Kunlun in some way, and this person tells Danny that he needs to return to New York because something is about to happen there. And that brings Danny to New York. We then have Luke Cage, who has finished serving his sentence and is now a free man. And he wants to go back to Night Nurse and start a new life with her. He doesn't know what he wants to do work-wise, which makes sense. He's just a bulletproof man. He doesn't have any special skills besides beating bad people up. But he gets back to his neighborhood and he immediately actually wants to try and clean up this hellhole it kind of have become. It's not that bad since he has left, but it is clearly felt that his presence has been missed. So he wants to get back in there and help the little guys. Matt Murdock is just turning on his own, being lawyers to the little people. We actually start off with seeing a guy who has probably lost the uses of his legs, so he kind of empathize with him and get a connection to him, and he's just taking the little guy's cases towards the big companies. What I liked about this is that we see him and Foggy actually interact with each other on good terms, and I think the reason is that since they have now split up and not working together, they actually like each other more because they don't have these different ideologies crashing together. Matt wanted not only to help the little guy out, he also wanted to be the daredevil on the sideline, and Foggy wasn't approving of that for obvious reasons. It brought him and his friends into danger, and they didn't focus on the attorney aspect of it. So he's out there defending the little guy. Jessica Jones she's just Jessica Jones. There's just a mom and her daughter who comes to her with a new case that he doesn't want to take because, he got more important things to do, like getting drunk. Yeah. But after he refuses to take the case, he gets a phone call from the person that is missing, and that spikes her interest, even though that the person says you need to stay awake. And then finally we get introduced to Sigourney Weaver's character, who I will not actually name here, mostly because I can't remember the name. She has this plan that slowly gets set into motion, and you see some old villains coming together from a different series, except Luke Cage. And the reasoning is being that nothing in that series focused on the Hand. And yeah, I don't think this is a spoiler alert, but the villain in this series is the Hand. But I will get to that in a moment. But you kind of get the feeling that there's something different about her, but you don't know what yet. You don't know what makes it special, except that when you see her, you're just getting told that she doesn't have that long to live. All her organs and inner system is just shutting down at the same time, which is kind of bad news. So she has a plan and she wants to hurry it up so she can finish it before she, gets solved. And the story is pretty much that the Defenders, or these 4 heroes, get intertwined because of how the Hand is connected to each different case. Jessica Jones with the missing person. There is Luke Cage, who wants to save or help a young man who is somehow connected to the Hand. There is Danny Rand, who's just, fighting the freaking Hand. And then there is Matt Murdock, who gets connected to Jessica Jones because of Hogarth, I believe she's called. It's the one who's plays Trinity in The Matrix, you know, the bitchy lawyer one from Jessica Jones. She hooks Matt up with Jessica Jones' case because she gets arrested because she's Jessica Jones. And this just moves the plot along. And they now need to find a way to work together, and they have extremely different ideologies. So it's not gonna work well. And while we have that, we have the Hand who's moving forward with this plan, who might mean the destruction of New York. So we can have that. And this is basically just the plot of the series. It is extremely simple. There's no big convoluted plan. There's no conspiracy. There's nothing of what you have seen in the former series. It's simple and to the point. The Hands wants to do something, and the Defenders, each and every one, is somehow tied and connected to their plot. And this is what gets them together and in the end makes them fight the Hand, and I like that. Overall, it's a simple plot, and it's for the most part to the series' strength. So here's the thing, this is why it gets a bit hard to review this series. Now, on one hand, you have the extremely talented crew behind Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage, who made a great job, especially Daredevil and Jessica Jones, because of how they told the story, how they filmed it, how they framed it, but also how they make you empathize with the characters, especially Jessica Jones, the dark tone and take on PTSD because she was a rape victim. So I like that. But you have that, and then on the other side of the fence you have the team behind Iron Fist. And I have stated this before, but I was too generous in my review of Iron Fist. If I had to be honest, I would have given it a meh experience, watch it on Netflix, because the flaws, it really bring it down to a not good level. And it shows here. So let me paint the picture for you. At sometimes you have amazing fight choreography like the Daredevil, but not quite on par with it. You can see it's a bit more slow and sloppy and not as inventive, but it is far ahead of what you was shown in Iron Fist and all that slow pacing bullshit we had there. But on the other hand, you have some extremely not imaginative fights given what their abilities are. You have Jessica Jones who's strong, you have Luke Cage who's also strong, but also a tank. He can take damage like no one else. You have Iron Fist, who has the glowing fist that's... I'm gonna get to that. Who can punch through walls and make small earthquakes. And you have the ninja acrobat who is Daredevil, who can find out where people are by listening to the heartbeats, especially since this is the Hand. So you have this roster of great and interesting fighters, and you're not quite using them to their full potential. And that is a bit of a bummer. However, when the fights are good, they are extremely good. At one time, you actually see Iron Fist and Luke Cage fight each other, and I believe it's one of the best fights in the series because it really shows their two different fighting styles. And for first time ever, we actually saw why in the Iron Fist series they said that this man was the best martial arts fighter ever, and you kind of go, I don't see it. Well, here you get a glimpse of it and kind of follow along. So the fight scenes are sometimes good, but sometimes bad. But the worst offender, and it's not just in the fight scene, it's the way they're shooting the fight scenes. I don't know who was in charge of the cinematography of this series, but they seemed extremely inexperienced. The thing is, a lot of times they chose to shoot a fight scene or interaction or whatever from a far distance. It was like a person spying on them. So you have some kind of fence in between you. It kind of obscured the scenery. You couldn't quite make out the characters interacting with each other, and it was annoying. And it wasn't that, it was either an over-shoulder shot, which I don't mind if it's done properly, but when, let's say this is the person you're shooting over the shoulder with. Can you see how little space there's here for the face? Oftentimes the space was even smaller, so it's more like this. So it's more like there was absolutely nothing here. And then you have the face of the person just being right here and go, so that Iron Fist guy, what was the glowing fist, too much masturbation? And it was annoying, and I know sometimes it's kind of stylistic, especially if you want to make it seem like that the person who's framed, the face of the person who's framed, is in a disadvantage, kind of claustrophobic in the conversation, or the other person is like controlling the conversation or putting a lot of pressure on them. Then it makes sense, but not here. It was two peers talking to each other. Either that, or they just insisted on doing the most idiotic thing, framing the shot down here and just shooting up for no reason. Now, why do you do that? Often it's because to show that this person is either intriguing or fearsome, or it's because they are in power here. It shows that you are in charge because you're looking up to the person. Oftentimes, on the other hand, you have a shot where you're filming down on the person because you're looking down on that person. But here it was just thrown in because I believe that you just thought, this is going to be a cool shot. Let's do that. There was no thought put behind of any of those shots at all, and it infuriated me because you have extremely well cinematography in both Daredevil and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. It was spot on, and at the times, even in Iron Fist, especially when you had with Watt and all that Danny Rand company thing, it was shot perfectly. But here you just had a piece of. It was just random. There was no thought behind it, and I know I'm getting a bit of a rant here and being kind of salty, but when there was so much thought put into this series, there was a lot of time it was showing, it was overflowing with creativity and competence, and then for some reason these shots that would just ruin the scene, just take you out of the scene and just go, what the fuck are you doing here, man? Do you even put thought behind how you frame your shots? No, I'm not saying here that I could have done it better because I have not had an education with this or have any experience with it, but with you, listen here, if you go on YouTube, and I can't remember the YouTuber or the YouTube video, so I can't put the link in the description. But if you go on YouTube and search for the Zodiac movie, I believe it's a scene where Jack Gyllenhaal is talking to this person who drew the posters, if you know what I mean, where they go down to the basement. There, the YouTuber is actually talking about how David Fincher framed the shot and the reason why. And it's that thought process that should be in every frame of your shot, if in any shot. Otherwise, you're not a good director, and you need a co-director who's know that shit, and then you can focus on the story and the actors, but not... Luckily, this is my biggest gripe, and I don't know why, but it is. You know, it's just sometimes it's the little things that just pisses you off. And yeah, they often did that with the fight scenes also. These weird ass kind of way of shooting a scene that didn't make sense and obscured the action. And I just go, why don't you want to show us the action? Rant over. Another thing that I didn't like is the fact that Iron Fist, and it's the same gripe that I had in the Iron Fist review, is that he doesn't really use his fist that much. Oftentimes he's just using his kung fu or whatever his fighting style is, and then occasionally he's using his fist, but it's rarely, so you're kind of wondering, then why are you even on this team? It makes sense with Daredevil that he's fighting this because he has his sonar. He's often telling his group, there are 5 or 6 guys behind this wall or in that van, and 4 of them have semi-automatic weapons, and we need to be careful when we gonna tackle them, or something like that. So it was kind of a bummer. However, the way they make these 4 individuals coming together is just done so much more perfectly and well done than they did in the first Avengers movie. Because in the first Avengers movie, it was just S.H.I.E.L.D., you know, getting him in, and then suddenly Thor appeared out of nowhere and they dragged him into it as well. Whereas here, it makes sense because they're following their own story and they just slowly get intertwined with each other. First, we have Danny Rand and Luke Cage who happen to stumble upon the same place with the hand, and it makes sense, and then have an interaction there, and later on Night Nurse, because he's with Luke Cage, she hear him out of what happened last night because he got, knocked out. And since you know them, both of them, she makes them interact with each other then and there. They meet there. And as I said before, Matt Murdock becomes Jessica Jones' attorney, her lawyer. So they meet there. And just the way they're slowly intertwined, and especially when they get to this building and meet, is where you have the hallway scene, which is, again, a missed opportunity because they get away from that scene pretty easily. And then later on, they say, oh, you were lucky we got out of there, man. Pooh! I mean, that was like no guys after us, and there was only 5 in the hallway, and we pretty much easily knocked them down. So yeah, it was pretty lucky we got out of there. That was a close call, man. Whew. The way it happens is I was cheering actually because of how well done it was. And then the fact that throughout the rest of the series, and I believe you are about halfway done here. It's the first time they meet and you are almost halfway done with the series. From that point on and until the end, the last episode, they are still kind of fighting amongst each other because their ideologies is so different. They have different way of looking at things. And I like that it didn't just suddenly change because they need it for the greater good or something like that. And it's just well written characters, and the fact that it didn't go against what characters we were presented in their own series. So plus on that. Now the Hand, on the other hand, oh my god, was quite disappointing when you look at Daredevil and Iron Fist, because there they were shown to be this extremely powerful and fearsome organization who everything they set their mind on they're gonna get. And here there's just barely anything. You have the leaders of the Hands, and then you have some Goonies, but that's pretty much it. And when I look back on Daredevil, I'm pretty sure there was ninjas. Am I remembering this wrong? I mean, ninjas that could not only slower their pulse, but even make it stop, so Daredevil he couldn't hear it. And they were quite fearsome fighters, but here, not really. It's just some men in suits and that's it. I think it would have been more appropriate if the Hand had put more pressure on the Defenders. They had the resources, why not use them? We have seen how fearsome they can be, so why cut back on it now? Because if you don't show it how fearsome they can be, then they don't seem that big of a threat. Biggest threat then seems to be how the Defenders are fighting amongst each other, and that's pretty much it. But Sigourney Weaver was a great addition to the story and the cast. She was mysterious, but you kind of guessed where she was coming from, and that's what I think this series did well. It didn't explain everything to you. It actually expected its audience to be a bit smart for themselves and try to figure out what's happening. They laid out all the hints, and then it was up to you to assemble the puzzle and look at the bigger picture. And not many series does this, or even movies or games or entertainment or anything for that fact does that very often these days. Now, before I go any further with this review, there is a thing I need to apologize for. I don't know. Back in my Iron Fist review, I said this, and I have a feeling that they are gonna be the main villain in Defenders. More on that in another video. Yeah, that video never came, and the reason for that, that's a good reason for that, is I believe it was maybe a week or so after I made that review, there was this teaser for the Defenders, which ended up by showing the Defenders title made in paper or newspaper clippings, and behind that there was a dark illuminating hand. So it was kind of obvious that it was the Hand is gonna be the villain. So yeah, I did make that. Now the Hand's goal in this series is intriguing until you find out what it is. And I can't go into detail without spoiling it, but let me just say that their goal, they want something. And if they get this thing, all of New York is gonna crumble to the ground. And when they're trying to accomplish this goal, you kind of go, so you're telling me that this thing that they want, that I'm watching on screen right now, is the only reason that New York hasn't crumbled? Huh? And you then kind of wonder, but if they remove this, they can't get out of it because this city will crumble upon. So yeah, that's some plot holes there. So what you end up with is my gripes about how they shot some of the scenes and the fact that their abilities wasn't used to the full potential, especially when you think about how creative they could make the fight scenes. But on the other side, you have a strong cast that bounces off each other perfectly. You have an interesting story, but quite simple. And even though that could be a negative thing, in here it makes the plot focused and on point and on track, and makes you want to watch the next episode to see where this leads. I even believe that the show runs over a couple of days to actually get to feel how tiring and desperate and stressed out these characters are. You find out more about the Hand. I just remember something. It's a gripe again. Damn it. I'm not going too much into it, but If you remember the first 2 seasons of Daredevil, there was a lot of talk about Black Sky, especially about Stick. And here you actually see Black Sky. But you don't see why Black Sky is so terrifying and so special at all. All you're told that Black Sky is amazing in fighting and killing people and is strong and doable. But then you just go, yeah, so is Luke Cage. He's strong and doable, and Iron Fist and Daredevil is quite efficient by fighting. So what's the deal with Black Sky? Why do we fear it that much? You don't know. You just have to accept it. But yeah, it also uses the side characters from every series extremely well. They're not that much in the story because they're not the focus, but they use them in a smart way and also make them interact with each other. They're kind of forced to interact with each other because of the events of the series here, but I like the fact that you actually kind of see Trish and Karen interact with each other. The one is a journalist, the other is a talk show radio host. But just the way they interact with each other, there's no wasted side character or even character here except for Black Sky maybe and Madame Gao. Even the Hand might be the only one that is kind of wasted because they're not as threatening as they were in not Iron Fist, Daredevil. Oh, kind of threatening in Iron Fist, but not as much in Daredevil. In Daredevil you just kind of thought, that's ninjas, man. Feel the ninjas. Oh, on a side note, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones and Danny Rand, they don't have suits at all. I mean, you saw Iron Fist suit in the Iron Fist series with the old clip, but they don't have suits. Matt Murdock has a suit. He has a Daredevil suit, and it looks ridiculous compared to them in their everyday clothes, even though there's a reason he has the suit. It's bulletproof around the head, and his suits can bounce off knife cuts and all that, so he doesn't get hurt that much. But there's a lot of funny scenes where he gets his suit on, he's ready, man. We're ready to fight. And then you just see Jessica Jones and Luke Cage standing beside him, just go, let's get this over with, man. And again, that's the way they interact with each other is just... But yeah, the Defenders, it was kind of a bummer for me. It didn't live up that much to the hype. The interaction between the main character was fine, but the story was a bit... I would have loved to see the Hand actually make more progress with their plan instead of what happened in the series. I wanted to see the Hand be more of a threat. I wanted to see more of the other series, what the Hand did in those series be more of an effect here instead of just what happened in Daredevil season 2 and then a bit of what happened in Iron Fist, but not that much. And Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's storyline from their own series didn't play into this at all. So that was a bit wasted. And then the fight scenes, because let's get real, we watched these series in part of a good fight scene, and when you don't deliver there, then you have to focus on the story and the character arcs and the way it is told and shot, and if some of that bumps you out, then it takes the series down. But since the series is only 8 episodes long, it's you can't help but just binge the series. It has a slow start, but it has a slow start with a purpose. That being that every character needs to get into their arc of the story. Luke Cage with the kids and Matt Murdock with Jessica Jones and all that shit, and then slowly build up of what the Hand's plan is. So it's a slow burner for the first 2 or 3 episodes, and then they starting to interact with each other, and then you get slowly to the final fight, which is a bit underwhelming, but at least you get to see Madame Gao in action, and that is always awesome. And you also see the Iron Fist more in the final episode, but again, I wanted it to be used more effective. I wanted an earthquake punch again. Something like that. The story was well told, it was well paced. There are some hiccups down the line, but you get invested in the characters, you get invested in the story, and since it is so simple as it is easy to follow, which makes you want to binge it more, and especially since it's only 8 episodes, it's like 4 hours a day, and then you have a weekend off. It doesn't set up the next phase of the Marvel's Defender Netflix series thingy, which is kind of a bummer. But on the other hand, that means that you have this isolated series you can focus on and not worrying about what's gonna happen next in the series. The only thing that we get to find out is that Danny Rand is gonna stay in New York. Yes. Oh, about New York. Quick side note, this is the final side note before the final score. The intro, it wasn't as appealing and memorable as Daredevil's was. I still remember not only the scenery but also the music. The music is kind of forgettable. However, the visual in that intro is brilliant for one reason only. If you haven't seen it, it's just the silhouettes of the Daredevil, Luke Cage, and them. But the silhouettes is colored in different colors, representing each other. Daredevil is red, Jessica Jones is blue, Luke Cage is yellow, and Iron Fist is green. But the silhouette is drawn with where their series took place in New York. So you have Hell's Kitchen, you have Harlem, and you have the other two, I can't remember. But I just thought it was brilliantly how they mapped each series with their silhouettes. It was well done. But yeah, I don't have any much more to say about this series. It was a great step up from Iron Fist. I just hope they get enough positive feedback from this series that they want to tackle the next phase on more seriously and put more effort into it, especially Iron Fist. I want it to be better because it has a lot of great potential. I want to see a real Iron Fist and not just I'm gonna make my hand glow a bit for 30 seconds and about it. No, I want to use them, both of them, and just go nuts. But yeah, it was a fine series. I actually liked it. It's not the best yet. I will still say it is only better than Iron Fist, so that's a bit of a bummer. It wasn't an Avengers episode like with Avengers. It was almost the best movie in the first phase of Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is not the case. It leaves room for improvement, but the core of it all is actually as good as I hoped it would be. So The Defenders is worth watching in cinema, entertainment guaranteed. So, The Defenders, have you seen it? What do you think about it? Comment below and let me read your thoughts. And as always, until I see you in the next video, remember to stay awesome. Bye! Right, done with the view. Time to get drunk.